There's no getting around the fact that today I'm going to be talking about a very evil monster. I'm not going to pull any punches here. This one is vile, extremely cruel, extremely horrific, and extremely deadly. That being said, grab yourself a tasty beverage and settle back. We're going to get to know one of the most famous and widespread Malaysian vampires, known in Dungeons & Dragons as the Penanggalan. I think every country in Southeast Asia has a version of the Penanggalan, each with a different but often related name, and while I respect the lore and traditions of each of those cultures, I have to pick one to focus on today. As fascinating as it is to delve into the variant myths and legends as a scholar of such things, we're here to learn about their place in Dungeons & Dragons lore. We're going into it raw, so you've been warned. Those offended at the very mention of menstrual blood, click away now. Those offended by strong language and depictions of children being eaten, click away now. Those offended by blatantly unfair and almost certain total party kill scenarios, you know what to do. Okay, those of you who are still here, it's time to get deeply nerdy and deeply disturbing. Compared to most depictions in the original 1981 Fiend Folio, the Penanggalan gets an essay on its nature and lore, a whole 1.5 pages, and 2 very evocative illustrations. We don't see this level of detail until 4th edition, where the Penanggalan also has some myth and legend crafted for it, which I think is excellently written. But more on that later in the video. I'll be covering what the creature is, where its evil is sourced from, its physical and supernatural traits, its terrible curse, its utterly vile form, its most valuable components eagerly sought after by hags and assassins, and lots of other deep lore from older editions of the game. My prime lore sources are the Fiend Folio 1st edition, Dragon Magazine issue 222 in the Necrology of the Penanggalan, and issue 258 in the Worms of the North series, Dungeon Magazine issues 71 and 72, the Monstrous Compendium Fiend Folio Appendix, Oriental Adventures for 3rd edition, the Monster Vault Threats to the Nth Veil for 4th edition, and Eric L. Boyd's Demi-Human Deities in 1998, and J.A. Coleman's Dictionary of Mythology. It is from that last book where we have a clue that Penanggalan is not really considered a vampire variant. It's a blood-sucking demon, a cursed and evil participant in a pact with the powers of hell that grants them eternal youth and beauty in exchange for a horrific transformation, tearing its head free from its deathless body with all the entrails being pulled out with it, then flying through the night seeking the blood of menstruating women, the blood and placenta from childbirth, and the blood of children, the younger the better. This fiend is not just a vampire, it embodies the idea that vanity can lead to a fall from grace, transforming one into a monster both in appearance and in action. In Dungeons & Dragons, particularly in a style of play we don't see much now, it takes advantage of something players used to do far more frequently, which was rely on non-player characters in their adventuring activities. Let me explain that for a moment. Hirelings, or retainers, were a big part of old school D&D. There were clear rules based on charisma and level, on how many you could keep with you, and rules governing their willingness to stick with you or cut their losses and flee, which we call morale. The benefit of having retainers with you is that they gave the player more options. They're great for carting around supplies, fetching more ammo, carrying torches, looking after your mounts and pack animals, and when the player characters were delving into ruins and so on. These days, we would see this more as opportunities to have quirky side characters around, but folks would probably be annoyed the Dungeon Master is sort of self-inserting into the story in the guise of these NPCs. And rightfully so, the players are justified in suspecting that these NPCs could turn on them at some point, being mind-controlled, secret pawns of their enemies, or monsters operating in plain sight. This is such a common trope it needs its own acronym, MOIPS, Monsters Operating in Plain Sight. The Penanggalan is exactly that sort of monster, or it certainly is intended to be, and here's how. In the original Fiend Folio listing, the Penanggalan appears as an attractive female, usually human, who can be any character class and with the full abilities of that character class and any alignment. It's very difficult to detect that this is an evil predator until she transforms into a horrific monster. There's one important exception. If the Penanggalan was a cleric of good alignment before they became this monster, they're no longer able to cast spells that require a good alignment. Bad news for those playing the latest edition of the game, as they have removed almost all alignment restrictions in the game now, so this little clue is now denied to you. The Penanggalan will seek to befriend any unwary party of travellers and attempt to join with them. They'll prove extremely useful. Over its years of undeath, it will have acquired an extensive knowledge of the dungeon which it now roams. It will be able to guide parties to treasure and warn them of possible dangers. Naturally, it will find some plausible reason for this knowledge, and may sometimes make deliberate mistakes or feign ignorance of areas which it has knowledge, in order not to arouse the suspicion of the party. It will never, however, encamp for the night with the party in the dungeon, nor will it accompany them to spend the night in the supposed safety of the upper world, making some excuse to be elsewhere. You see, at night, the Penanggalan assumes its real form, with the head and internal organs wrenching themselves free of the still living body, those teeth growing into fangs, which it leaves behind, taking flight by supernatural means, its revolting viscera, wet and dripping a vile fluid mix that sizzles and acidly burns on contact, but also inflicts immediate, almost bubbling infection on living tissue, causing a sudden and painful eruption of pus-oozing boils that ravish the living meat. Thankfully, this horrific liquid evaporates after one round in contact with air. There may be ways for it to be collected by containers created by hags, for instance, that preserve it, and it will fetch quite a sum when traded with very vile and evil creatures, or assassins who seek out the most vicious toxic substances as tools of their profession. Penanggalans come into existence as a result of pacts with the forces of the Nine Hells. It is a terrible curse that is the eternal price paid by a woman who seeks eternal youth and unmatched beauty at any cost. Well, she gets the first part. Her body is infused with life that will not cease until her head is destroyed. Even when essentially decapitated and gutted, the body will still be alive and in stasis until the head and entrails return. But the guts and organs of the Penanggalan swell after tearing free of the body, and the creature needs to soak itself in a barrel or large urn of vinegar in order to sort of pickle and shrivel its organs down to size, stuffing them back into the body. The original Penanggalans are usually attempting to get out of their infernal contract when they are caught and executed by hanging before they can free their soul. They can never escape then, and now pass their curse down to female victims who had no willing part in the deal. This presents several significant telltale signs that a woman is one of these monsters if you know what you're looking for. Or they usually have the smell of vinegar around them, and they will not bleed when cut or otherwise injured. Penanggalans have not just a voracious supernatural thirst for humanoid blood, they have some pathological obsessions with other things related to the worst aspects of bitchy female behaviour. There is just no way to sugarcoat it. They are extremely dangerous to pretty women. Anyone in any sort of happy relationship, and they are deadly to pregnant women, infants and small children. It is particularly fond of the blood of young children or of pregnant females and menstrual blood or afterbirth. But lacking such a feast, it will select the party member who appears to be the most susceptible to hypnosis. Originally, the Penanggalan was only human and would attack only other humans, no elves, dwarves and so on, but that's no longer the case. Penanggalans are also difficult to detect and tend to be hard to track down once they flee to their lair if discovered, since they keep up to 6 different lairs they can retreat to. Penanggalans will react very oddly to any signs of genuine physical affection between others. They find it infuriating. It may be possible to drive a Penanggalan into a screaming fit of homicidal rage if confronted with passionate love being consummated right before their eyes. They may even rip off their head and guts and fly into combat, unless standing in full sunlight, as the touch of the sun's light on their demonic form will paralyze them. Not set them on fire or turn them to dust, and they will snap out of it the moment they're back in shadow. They can walk around in daylight just fine when they're in their disguised form. Now, here is where they can absolutely wipe out a party of adventurers. The sight of their transformation is so revolting and horrific that it can cause a person's heart to stop from fright. Thankfully, that's old school D&D, but save versus stunned condition, and even after being left with what is basically the feeble mind spell effect, is pretty brutal. The Penanggalan does all it can to avoid being seen transforming, unless it's pretty damn sure it's going to murder everyone who sees it. What they love to do is infiltrate a town or lord's manor and set themselves up as a midwife or some such, a nurse, who's kept well informed about which women are expecting children who has young children and how many. The monster will start to relentlessly, inexorably pick them off, one by one. Also, ladies might notice that their personal garments have gone missing during that time of the month, as the Penanggalan can't resist feeding on that blood, and you can be sure no childbirth is going to be successful with that monster involved. They will even dig up the graves of stillborn children to feed on their cold blood. They are absolutely evil hellspawn. But by day, they can act like the most virtuous and charming, pure and lovely maidens. Their power lies in the fact that people are so reluctant to believe that what could be true, that such a woman is really a terrible predator, like a spider wearing the form of a butterfly. Penanggalan are also deadly because they have a strong ability to hypnotize any who look at them. They must also often feed on victims who are either sound asleep or in a magically induced slumber of the mind that will wipe out any memory the victim has of seeing the creature in its true form. The feeding signs are 2 small lacerations on the neck, perhaps an outbreak of vicious boils the victim is too ashamed to bring to anyone else's attention. The Penanggalan can only ever see other women, even a little girl, as nothing but a hated enemy, and will feed on them first. If the blood of a man is drained over a few nights to the point he weakens so much he dies, there is a chance he's raised from the dead, but it's difficult. A woman who dies this way will certainly become a Penanggalan herself. For men, the bites of the creature will continue to weaken like a supernatural wasting illness unless magic is used to rid himself of this evil taint. For women, they face transforming into one of these monsters unless they're rescued by magic as well. If any person happens to see the head and gut when detached from the body, for example, if the intended victim awakens before the creature has time to commence hypnosis, they must save against fear or flee in abject terror. When in this form, however, the creature can be turned or dispelled by a cleric, treated as a wraith on the cleric undead turning matrix. If the head and gut are thus turned, they must return to their lair and not venture out again that night. It's important to note that Penanggalan can be turned. It has about the same resistance as a wraith, and the sight of a holy symbol presented strongly at them will cause them pain and some amount of fear. In maiden or flying head form and guts form, the creature takes normal damage from weapons. If it's weaponless and in human form, it can bite for 1d6 hit points of damage, but it will try to avoid doing this mode of attack for fear of revealing its true nature. Penanggalans live to feed and spend a portion of each day hunting for potential victims. They typically prey on young innocents that won't be missed, such as youths from poor urban areas or isolated villages. Penanggalans rarely stay in one place for long. They monitor the activity, the alarm level of the populace. During the daytime, they monitor the aftermath of their nocturnal kills to gauge when it's time to move into new hunting grounds. If they've fed in the last 10 hours, the Penanggalans will be flush with a ruddy complexion thanks to all the blood coursing through them from their victims. Oh, I forgot to mention, the gradual feeding method of Penanggalans on females. With males, she will drain them all in one night if possible, killing one in one bloated feeding. Finally, while in head form, the Penanggalan speaks in a gurgling manner that is barely recognizable as common speech. The listener who makes an intelligence check can understand the speech, but the monster's conversation about impending doom of the listener or the joys of being undead is not riveting to listen to. And there we have it, folks, the dreaded Penanggalan. I hope you enjoyed it and want to add them to your games. Rarely. My name is AJ Pickett. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.